Yay!
Yay! Yay!
It's winter time. It's winter time. It's winter
It's
time.
beginning to look a lot like winter
Yeah, you can't say holiday.
everywhere you go.
There we go. It is Christmas time. Not really. It's Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, um, whatever holidays otherwise, you
Yes,
know.
happy holiday season, whatever you celebrate. Maybe you
Yes.
celebrate Christmas, maybe Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, maybe something else. Either
As
way,
long as you're happy
yes. As long as
and
you're
warm.
happy and you're enjoying the season for what it's
Mhm.
worth.
And you're warm. You need to
Yes.
be warm.
You need to be warm. This
Build
hat
a fire.
actually is very warm.
It looks warm. It looks like it's made out of that material that all the theater stuff's made out of. That really like wool type
Yes.
material. Is that what it's made out of?
It's I think it's made out of cotton, but it's actually pretty warm. And
All
this
right.
is actually really warm. It's just like sweater material. So
Okay.
I don't think it's technically wool, probably because it's sort of cheap, but
This is an actual owl.
oh, a
Yes.
real owl.
Yes. It's on life support. You can't see, but the IV runs behind me
Oh
so
my
that it can
goodness.
live with my head lodged into the lower stratums
Oh my
of it.
goodness. So
So
sick.
yes, it is. It is alive. Right now it's in stasis. I will release it. And I've named it Minerva, and I will release it at dusk. So
Um,
anyway.
all right, so today we are reading some holiday themed, winter themed stories, and we'll be chatting about them. So, this is a family friendly podcast. So, you're welcome to watch this with kiddos if you have them. The Snowman, the first story we're reading, is near and dear to my heart. I remember reading it as a young kid and loving it. I haven't read it in a really long time. They also adapted it into a film. And I remember the film is really beautiful with like the scoring and the music. Um,
And
so
it's not so there's one with Michael Keaton called Jack Frost. That's not the
no,
same thing,
that
right?
is a totally different movie.
Okay, just asking. Okay.
So this is the Snowman, and you can find this online.
Hmm.
Uh, if
I'll
you,
post the link on the chat. Hold on.
yeah.
I did
Uh,
that last time. I'll try to be good about that. All right, close.
so this is the story by Raymond Briggs, The Snowman, and we're reading the Lady Bird books.
There goes the chat. Oh, is it Ladybird Books? Is that who the publisher is? I think that's who it was, right? Yes, it is.
Yes.
Oh, and it looks like a it doesn't look like a ladybird. Oh no. Anyway.
So, if you are new to our channel, let us know if there are any holiday stories that you would like us to read and discuss, or any stories in general. Also, please subscribe. Um, Throughout all of December, we'll be reading and discussing winter-themed stories that are family friendly.
Yay. And we got the Grinch coming up and some Sedaris stuff. David Sedaris.
Yes,
Yeah, so it'll be fun.
it's gonna be fun. All right.
Oh, yay.
So if you're ready to get started, you can pull
See,
up Snowman if you're following along.
and you're reading The Snowman, so I am listening to The Snowman.
Yes, The
And this winter,
Snowman by Raymond Briggs.
it looks like a ladybug, but I get what they did there.
The Snowman by Raymond Briggs. As soon as James came out of bed, he knew it would be a magical day. The best thing to do would be to make a snowman, a big body, and a big round head. Coal eyes, a tangerine nose, a hat and a scarf. His snowman was finished. That night it was hard to sleep, so James got up to see his snowman. This was magical. His snowman was walking towards the house. He explored the house with James. The fridge was best. It was cold, just how snowmen like it. The snowman tried everything. Then the snowman was outside, running across the snow. James went with him, and suddenly they were walking in the air, looking far below, holding very tight, and flying across the world. When they landed, the snowman led James to some dark, dark woods.
Oh.
And there they came upon the most amazing sight. All the snowmen and snowwomen of the world had come for a party. Next morning, James rushed out to see his snowman. Had he been dreaming? But he still had a scarf, his present from Father Christmas at the party. And then you see a picture of the snowman melted. So I really love this story, but I have to say, as an animated film, it
Mhm.
resonates on such a deeper level because it's really long. Well, it's much longer than the story itself. The illustrations in the story are really beautiful, but the illustrations in the animated story are really, really awesome.
They're
And
better than this.
yes.
I feel like some stuff's
Well,
missing in this. When he went to the dark woods, I don't know why he needed to do that. That seemed like it was odd, but it seems like there's a whole section missing because later on he has something from Father Christmas. I feel like there's some story in there that we didn't get. Like,
right.
we missing pages or something? That's what it seems like.
No, it's not
But
that we're missing pages. It's just that this particular story is shorter than the animated film. The animated film is the full story. This is just a storybook. So it doesn't, the storybook itself, it's fun, but it doesn't necessarily capture the magic of the animated film because the animated film is a silent film. No dialogue. The illustrations are really great, and the music itself is just very, very moving and fun. And then you see James like you said, in the animated film, you see James going along and dancing at this party with like Santa Claus and all the snowmen. And there's like
Mhm,
a
mhm.
huge dance scene. Uh,
Michael Keaton's there.
no, that's a different movie. That is
But
a
I didn't see
different
Michael
movie.
Keaton yet. He hasn't shown up yet. He's Jack
It's a
Frost.
different movie
And
than Jack
he's
Frost.
also Batman, by the way. But mm,
So if you haven't seen the animated film, I would definitely recommend it.
please.
Reading the story, it's cute, but it definitely doesn't capture the same magic as the film.
I think there's some holes in the plot.
Yeah, the story itself, I feel like if they developed it a little more like the animated film, it would
Mhm.
probably be a little more fun, but
And what's with the tangerine nose? It's a carrot. Everybody knows it's a carrot. It's not a
no,
tangerine.
I
It's a
mean
carrot.
the illustrations actually match the illustrations in the film. It's actually funny in the film because in the film he tries out all these different things for the nose and then he finally settles on like the little tangerine or whatever that is. So the
You don't
movie
feel like it should
itself,
be a carrot? Shouldn't be a carrot?
I mean that's tradition, but in the movie, the illustrations are just like the illustrations in the movie. They're just static. They're not
Mhm.
moving. So the illustrations are true to the film.
Do you know the joke? What did one snowman say to the other one?
No.
Do you smell carrots?
Oh, I've heard that one before.
Okay, yeah, that's a cute joke. That's a cute joke. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know about the tangerine. That makes the snowman look fat. If he had the stick nose, I feel like he would look thinner. He looks like he's been eating
You
like
mean like
some high
just
calorie
his
snow.
nose or his whole like
And
small?
that hat too, because I'm used to them wearing more like a derby or like a more dapper hat. And that hat kind of looks like he's on vacation. I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. If
And in
everybody
the
nobody
film,
can
in the film, he visits like the big like festival with all the snowmen dancing, and then there's Santa Claus, and
Mhm.
I think the snowman tries on different hats too
He needs to
in the
for a
film.
party. For a party, he's going to need a whole different. And that hat is not. That hat's more like I say, that hat's like you're having wings and somewhere on the beach. It's not a hat that you'd wear to a party, a snowman party. A snowman party is going to need stiff brim, something. Maybe that green brim, like he's the dealer in a poker party. I don't know, but I'm not sure. But it isn't that. It isn't that hat. So
Well, I just love this film, so I highly recommend watching the movie. As far as the book, this particular version of the story, I wouldn't say I love it. I definitely don't hate it. I'm kind of in the middle, just because it doesn't nearly capture the magic that the movie does. What do you
I'll
think?
take the middle. I'll take the middle because I really, I honestly, I don't like it, but you like it so much that I feel like maybe I'm missing something.
Well,
And
you
I
have
do
to
feel
see
like
the
there's pages
movie.
left out because he got a scarf from Father Christmas and he didn't mention anything. What's Father Christmas look like? I don't know. It's just that story. I feel like the kid would not want to go to sleep when you read the kid this story. He'd have all these questions. You
Yeah.
know, well, what's going on here?
Yeah, the story doesn't do it justice like the movie.
And
Um,
why did he melt? He melted like the next day. He comes back and he's melted there, but it's still snowy outside. So what did he? Why did he melt?
well, the idea is the sun melted him, but I mean, there's
But
still
there's
layers of
snow
snow.
everywhere still.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know the cart? Do you know the cartoon Frosty the Snowman? You remember that one when you were a kid?
Yes. Yes.
And it's the one. Yeah, with the magic hat. They put that like a top hat on him, and the hat's what makes him turn into Frosty. We thinking of the same thing?
Yeah, there must have been some magic
Some
in
magic
that
in
old
that
silk
old.
hat they found, for when they placed it on his head, he began to dance around.
And they had that cool
Yes.
goofy voice and
Yes.
you could and they could sled on his back like he was like Belle and Sebastian. I don't know if you remember that cartoon, but Belle and Sebastian, same type of thing. But I
Yes.
don't I that cartoon when I was a kid, every Christmas for sure. Yeah. That reminds me of this, all that. That's why I
Yeah,
say he doesn't fit my snowman.
it's
Hmm.
very much like a Frosty the Snowman story. I think what sells the film, what makes the film so good is the music and the animation and the silent. There's no dialogue. So it's almost like watching a ballet, right? A ballet is performed with no dialogue, just expressions and music. And it feels very much like a musical because there's like this whole dance number. The scoring is
So
what
no speaking from anybody.
no.
Are there sound effects like when the boy's talking, do they play a music that fits to his voice? You know what I mean? Like something that's maybe like some
Well, he
tintinnambulation or like
doesn't
a
talk
xylophone
in
or
the
something.
film. There's no talking.
But I mean, it's like saying when the kid's talking, do you have like a xylophone
There
playing,
is
like
no
something high
talking.
pitched? No, no, I get that. I'm saying
He
when the kid
doesn't move
looks
his
like he,
mouth. There's no talking. They literally just express themselves with facial expressions
so
and
you
move
don't see,
and
they're
body.
not even trying to talk.
No,
Oh,
that's what makes the
okay.
movie
That's
really
different.
captivating, I think. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's what
I
makes
would
it
give that a watch.
captivating. Yeah, I would recommend watching it. Um, but at least now we can say we've read the story version. All right.
We have to little effect. I don't know. Right there.
Yeah, I would give it a neutral.
Like,
Um,
like, so if the kid comes to you and they said, "Hey, can you read me this story before I go to bed?" You're like, no, just go to bed. Just go to bed. Just go to bed. I'm not reading you that. Just go to bed. I was in a good mood. Now I'm not. Go to bed. I'm gonna go find a better hat
Well,
than
I think
that.
also it depends on the age of the kid, but if you show them the illustrations, I think the illustrations make it fun for
That's
young
fair.
kids, for
That's
young
fair.
kids. Not for
Good.
like, I would say this would be a good story for like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, no more than 5
Oh,
year old. Because
yeah.
I feel like once kids get older than 5, I feel like the story wouldn't be nearly as fun as like the movie.
Okay. I'm with you. All right. There's
All
that.
right. Do you want to move on to the Tree of Cranes?
The Tree of Cranes. Yes. Okay. Did you do the story? Do you know the story? Did you read it or whatever?
No, this will be my first time.
So I did. I was researching, trying to find, because that's what we were going back and forth about, trying to find stories that were not necessarily from this country. And
Yeah.
this one actually is from this country, but it's excuse me, people who are not like the mother's not from this country. So she's
Okay.
explaining to the kid how, or sorry, they live in Japan now, and that she's still keeping the traditions of Christmas that are from here there.
Got
So that's what I thought. But I thought it was a really cute story. It's very pretty. Anyway, I just thought it was a pretty story. I went through a bunch of kid stories to find this one. So
it.
anyway, but I thought it was very pretty.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to hear it because I've never read it before. So this is The Tree of Cranes by uh, Alan Say from 1991.
All right, I'm ready when you are.
I'm ready.
All right, Tree of Cranes by Alan Say. When I was not yet old enough to wear long pants, Mama always worried that I might drown in a neighbor's pond. Time and again, she warned me not to play there, but I never listened because the pond was filled with carp of bright colors. The last time I went there was a gray winter day, too cold for the fish to move around. They never came out from under the rocks, and all I caught was a bad chill. Mama would be upset with me. I knew. She would know right away how I got my mittens all wet. But then she might be happy just to see me. Mama, I'm home, I called. There was no answer. She's always met. She, she always met me at the porch. Always. I called again. And finally she answered, sounding far away. I waited, but she didn't come out to see me. She must be sick, I thought. Mama was in the living room, folding origami paper. She just nodded, barely looking at me. But there were two slices of my favorite tea cake waiting for me. That made me feel better. Why are you making cranes? I asked. Because I want to make a big wish, she said without looking up. You're going to fold 1,000 cranes to make your wish come true? Maybe even 2,000. She reached out and touched my face and with her cold hand. Why? You're hot all over. Mama frowned and gave me a silent stare. I hung my head and said nothing. She knew. Anytime Mama thought I had a cold, it was time for a hot bath. 10 minutes, 10 whole minutes, and not 1 second less, she told me. She was upset. She didn't even rinse my back. Her slippers went shuffling all the way down the hallway. Then a door closed shut. She wasn't coming back to keep me company. I'd better say I'm sorry, I thought to myself. But before I could apologize, Mama put me in my night clothes. I don't want to go to bed. You need to stay nice and warm. All afternoon? All afternoon. Will you read me stories? No stories, but I'll make you hot lunch. I knew what that meant. Rice gruel. Only sick people ate rice gruel. And that's what I had, with a sour plum and yellow radishes, eating all alone and drinking hot tea in Papa's big cup. Then I lay down facing the door and hoped Mama would come back with an apple and peel the skin in a long strip like a red ribbon and then read me a story. The door never opened. Mama, I called finally. She didn't answer. After a long while, I heard a noise coming from the garden. Maybe the old gardener had come to clip our trees again. I got up and opened the window. It was snowing outside, and Mama was digging around a small tree. What are you doing? I shouted. Mama stopped and stared. Close that window this second and go straight back to bed. Quickly, I closed the window and laid down again. She's really angry now, I thought. But why is she gardening in the snow? Is she digging a hole because she's angry with me? I didn't know what to think. I was nearly asleep when Mama came in. She was carrying a tree in a blue pot. It was the little pine Mama and Papa had planted when I was born, so I would live a long life like the tree. What are you doing with my tree? I asked. You'll see, she said, setting down the pot. Do you know what today is? Ah, 7 days before the New Year's Day. That's right, she said, and smiled. Then she fetched the silver cranes and some sewing things from the living room. Finally, Mama sat down. She put a thread through one of the cranes and hung it from the tree. I have been aching strangely all day, she said. I started to reply, but she shushed me. If you promise to stay in bed, I will tell you why. I promise, I said. I was born and lived far away in another country, long before I came here and met your father. Where? A warm place called California, she whispered. I nodded. Today is a very special day in that warm place. If you happened to be there now, you would see trees like this everywhere, all decorated with winking lights and small globes of silver and gold. And under each tree, there are boxes of presents people give to friends and loved ones. I want a samurai kite, I said. You give and receive, child. It is a day of love and peace. Strangers smile at one another. Enemies stop fighting. We need more days like it. She put the last crane on the tree. It's wonderful, I cried. It's not finished, she said. And she brought some candles from the kitchen and tied them to the branches. Are you going to burn my tree? I asked. Mama laughed. Just the candles, and only for a short while. We'll replant your tree tomorrow. I want to light them. May I? May I? Do it quickly then. Mama let me strike the matches. And when the candles were lit, she fell silent. She was remembering. She was seeing another tree in a faraway place where she had been small like me. Mama held me in her lap. The cranes turned slowly, flashing candlelight. There couldn't be a tree more beautiful than mine, I thought. Not even in the place where Mama was born. What present would you like? I asked. Only peace and quiet, Mama said. I mean something for me. Only something, oh, something very, very special, like a promise. I said I would stay in bed. Another promise then. All right. Give me your word you'll never go to the pond again. I promised. I was fast asleep when Papa came home. Next morning, I jumped out of bed because a fierce warrior was staring at me. But it was only a kite. Only a kite, the one I had always wanted. Then I saw the tree behind it, my tree. Suddenly I remembered the last night and all that Mama had told me. Thank you, Mama. Thank you, Papa. I ran outside with my present. Outside, everything was covered with snow. There'll be another day, Mama said. A fine windy day with no snow. Plenty of snow to make a snowman, Papa said. Let's make one together. And like the snowman we made, many years have melted away. But I always remember the day of peace and quiet. It was my first Christmas.
Aw, that's
Yeah,
really cute.
it's cute. It's a little nonplussed, but it's cute. Mm.
Yeah, I like the themes of culture, traditions, and how like it kind of makes you think about your cultural traditions and from an objective standpoint. Like, because a lot of times if you've been practicing the same traditions since you were a kid, it's easy to just kind of accept them and not think about them critically or like question like them at all.
Hmm.
So if you imagine yourself from the little boy's perspective, it sort of changes your perspective about it. But it's also
It's cute.
like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a mix of sort of like warmth and wonder and a little melancholy, but and the love of like the mother for her son. Um, I like it. I like it.
For a lack of better way to put it, it's a very stoic way for a child to look at Christmas or to look at Christmas in general. I don't know. It's just it's pretty though. I liked it. It's very like I said, it's simple. It kind of made me a little sad. Um, I don't know, but it did
Yeah,
make me sad. The story makes me sad.
I like that it's a little sad, but it's like a blend of melancholy, warmth, and wonder.
Hmm.
So it's a little more warm than it is sad, at least for me.
Okay.
Because it does show that like she's showing him this tradition as a way of like expressing love and joy, right? Trying to get him to
Hmm.
enjoy this time, even though he's sick. So I like that part. And but yeah, it does kind of make you want to sort of like have like a fresh lens on cultural traditions. Like if you're looking at certain cultural traditions through that boy's eyes, they're kind of weird, right? I mean, we
Hmm.
we put like a live tree in a house. Like if you think about that objectively, it's kind of weird, right?
A lot of people cut that tree down, or they have a plastic one. So
Yeah, that's true.
but I don't know. It's a weird. We have a weird set of traditions, but I don't know. The
I
main thing
really
that everything, all the traditions around Christmas, They vary and they're variegated from generation to generation. But the one thing that stays is that they you do them together.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the family stays together. It's just the little details, the minutia changes a bit. But
Yeah.
everybody ends up at the dinner table. Everybody ends up and like the peace and love. The most of the high points that they hit in this, those are the things that have really lasted through the test of time.
Yeah, like if you think
Mhm.
about all cultures across the world, they celebrate the holidays. All their little details might be different, but like you said, there's more commonalities than differences. Like when it comes to celebrating this time of year, there's more commonalities, even though like some of the details are very different. Like you said, it's they all come together and it's about togetherness and unity. And I really like the illustrations. They're like
Oh, it's
soft.
very pretty, right? Yeah.
Yeah, they're like soft and detailed. I enjoy the illustrations. The visuals almost feel a little nostalgic as well.
Some of like I say, some of the visuals just make me sad. They make me feel small, but they're it's it's simple, so it has a kid's feel to it.
Yes, yeah. I like the simplicity of it. I like little simple stories like this sometimes, you know.
Mhm.
It's very nostalgic because as you get older, people want to write stories that are really complex with all these like deep themes and sometimes it's nice and refreshing just to read like a simple, charming story
Mhm.
that isn't like super heady or open to all this different interpretation and controversy, you know?
Mhm.
So,
I think that's fair. Hmm.
so do we love this story? Do we hate it? Are we in the middle?
I'll take a
I
love.
think I love this one. I'm glad you
Tree
found
of
it.
Cranes.
Yeah.
Tree of Cranes. Yeah, that was a tough. And I'll venture to guess this is a Japanese family. Just a shot in the dark, but it looks like a Japanese family.
Yeah.
And I do love Japanese women in that it's they have that history for the samurai and the tough guy and all this stuff. But when you pan or juxtaposition just to the woman that stands next to him, man, those women are stern. Like they're
Yeah.
very they're decided. They're not there's no frivolous nature to them. They're decided. And I'm not saying Japanese on the whole. I'm just saying that that's just like the samurai are modeled as being very tough and macho. The Japanese women that stand alongside them are decided and they know exactly. They know the direction. They know the direction, and that's I think that's just an impressive quality. And you can see that the mom is just. You can see he has like there's no questioning his mom all the way through. He has
Yeah.
utmost respect for her, and that's a cool. He isn't badgering her. He isn't oh, well, I got to do this. It's that's how it is, and that makes her just
Yeah.
like a really cool mother, like a really not a disciplinarian either, because she's respected. Um,
Like
yeah,
she's stern and she's stern but in a loving way.
yeah,
So,
and he trusts her. You can tell he trusts her.
yeah.
Yeah, and I love the fact they planted a tree when he was born. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's a cool idea. Yeah.
I
Hmm.
like it too. Hi Mopar, how are you tonight?
Oh, I'll be right back.
Okay. So Mopar, we just read a story. I don't know when you exactly tuned in, but it was called Tree of Cranes. And it was about a relationship between a mother and son. He goes outside in the cold, gets a little sick, and then she brings him in, takes care of him, and then she introduces him to a American tradition of a Christmas tree. She says she used to live in California. I really like how she whispers it too. A warm place called California. Like anybody who's been there, it's, I don't know, a little tongue in cheek. And he gets like the kite that he always wanted. Um, and I also really like this part where she says, "You give and receive, child. It is a day of love and peace. Strangers smile at one another. Enemies stop fighting. We need more days like that." Yeah. It is kind of funny how in America around Christmas time, a lot of us seem to be a little kinder. And it's silly. It's like, why can't we be kind like that all year round?
Oh, I do like that the thing that she captured from the holiday had no bells and whistles.
Mhm.
She got a tree, she dug up a tree from the yard, potted it in the house, and made the ornamentation for the tree herself by hand. And I guess there's a thing in Japanese culture where if you make 1,000 crayons, you get a wish. But
Yeah.
she made the decorations, sewed them to the tree. I mean, she didn't get the thing that the price tag on most Christmases. That's a thing that people I kind of resent that, and I think a lot of people do. Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
I guess nobody likes it, but everybody seems to go after it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but yeah, the bells and the whistles, all that stuff, all those are gone. It's stripped, it's denuded to a very cool Christmas. Like
Yeah, it's
that's
a very simple homemade Christmas tree. It's not trying, a lot of Americans try to impress people with like fancy Christmas trees, which is kind of silly. And Christmas has become so commercial. And I love that this shows an example of not trying to show off with like a tree, but just embracing the tradition in a simple homemade way. And I love the origami bit. I actually know origami. I used to do a lot of origami
you met
growing.
them?
Yeah,
Oh,
I know how to make a lot of different. I actually made an origami tree when I was a kid. I
mm,
made not the tree itself. The tree itself was just like a regular tree, but I made all origami ornaments. So I know how to make like little balls, little trees, little candy canes. So
there we
that
go.
that spoke to me on a personal level, the origami. Um,
Yay! All
Um,
right, what do we
all
got?
right, cool. So our next story that we were going to read and discuss is another one that feels very nostalgic for me just because I remember reading this story. I think my mother read it to me when I was a kid, and it always stood out to me. Um, I haven't read it in I don't even know how many years, a very long time. So I'm excited to read it again for the first time. It's called The Little Match Girl. So you can find this online
Oh, here
on
I can add that in.
shortstoryamerica.com. So shout
I'll
out
add it into the chat. There it is. Oops.
shortstoryamerica.com.
Hmm. Yes, shout out to them for keeping literature alive.
Yes, and this is by Hans Christian Andersen.
Oh, wow. Okay. I
Yes.
didn't even catch that. I totally missed that. Wow.
Mhm. All right, so snuggle up and get ready. I'm going to read this. I have a bit of a cold, which is very appropriate for the story I'm about
Thank
to
you for getting a
read.
cold for the show. Thank you for that.
Just for the show, I purposely got a cold.
Stayed
Um,
out in the cold.
forgive my scratchy voice, but
You did not build a fire in order to get the cold
yeah.
for the post-fire show. Got it.
All right, so here we go. The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen. Most terribly cold it was. It snowed and was nearly quite dark. And evening, the last evening of the year, in this cold and darkness, there went along the street a poor little girl, bareheaded and with naked feet. When she left home, she had slippers on, it is true. But what was the good of that? They were very large slippers, which her mother had worn. So large were they that the poor little thing lost them, and she scuffled away across the street because of two carriages that rolled by dreadfully fast. One slipper was nowhere to be found. The other had been laid hold of by an urchin, and off he ran with it. He thought it would do capitally for a cradle when he some day or other should have children himself. So he stole her shoe. So the little maiden walked on with her tiny naked feet that were quite red and blue from the cold. She carried a quantity of matches in an old apron, and she held a bundle of them in her hand. Nobody had bought anything of her the whole livelong day. No one had given her a single farthing. She crept along trembling with cold and hunger, a very picture of sorrow, the poor little thing. The flakes of snow covered her long fair hair, which fell in beautiful curls around her neck. But of that, of course, she never once now thought. From all the windows the candles were gleaming, and it smelt so deliciously of roast goose, for you
Mhm.
know it was New Year's Eve, yes. Of that she thought. In a corner formed by two houses, of which one advanced more than the other, she seated herself down and crowded together. Her little feet she had drawn close up to her, but she grew colder and colder, and to go home she did not venture, for she had not sold any matches, and could not bring a farthing of money. From her father she would certainly get blows, and at home it was cold too, for above her she had only the roof through which the wind whistled, even though the largest cracks were stopped up with straw and rags. Her little
Jeez.
hands, her little hands were almost numbed with cold. Oh, a match might afford her a world of comfort if she only dared take a single one out of the bundle, draw it against the wall, and warm her fingers by it. She drew one out. Risht, how it blazed, how it burned! It was warm, bright, flame like a candle. As she held her hands over it, it was a wonderful light. It seemed really, to the little maiden, as though she were sitting before a large iron stove, with burnished brass feet and a brass ornament at the top. The fire burned with such blessed influence. It warmed so delightfully. The little girl had already stretched out her feet to warm them too, but the small flame went out. The stove vanished, and she had only the remains of the burnt out match in her hand.
Oh,
She rubbed another against the wall. It burned brightly, and where the light fell on the wall, there the wall became transparent like a veil, so that she could see into the room. On the table was spread a snow-white tablecloth. Upon it was a splendid porcelain service, and the roast goose was steaming famously with its stuffing of apple and dried plums.
mm,
And what was still more capital to behold was the goose hopped down from the dish, reeled about on the floor with knife and fork in its breast, till it came up to the poor girl, when the match went out, and nothing but the thick, cold, damp wall was left behind. She lighted another match. Now, there she was sitting under the most magnificent Christmas tree. It was still larger and more decorated than the one she had seen through the glass door in the rich merchant's house. Thousands of lights were burning on the green branches, and gaily colored pictures, such as she had seen in the shop windows, looked down upon her. The little maiden stretched out her hands towards them when the match went out. The lights of the Christmas tree rose higher and higher. She saw them now as stars in heaven. One fell down and formed a long trail of fire. "Someone is just dead," said the little girl, for her old grandmother, the only person who had loved her, and who was now no more, had told her that when a star falls, a soul ascends to God. She drew another match against the wall. It was again light, and in the luster there stood the old grandmother, so bright and radiant, so mild, and with such an expression of love. "Grandmother!" cried the little one. "Oh, take me with you. You go away when the match burns out. You vanish like the warm stove, like the delicious roast goose, and like the magnificent Christmas tree." And she rubbed the whole bundle of matches
Oh,
quickly against the wall, for she wanted to be quite sure of keeping her grandmother near her. And the matches gave such a brilliant light that it was brighter than at noonday. Never formerly had the grandmother been so beautiful and so tall. She took the little maiden on her arm, and both flew in brightness and in joy, so high, so very high. And then above was neither cold, nor hunger, nor anxiety. They were with God. But in the corner, at the cold hour of dawn, sat the poor little girl, with rosy cheeks and with a smiling mouth, leaning against the wall, frozen to death on the last evening of the old year. Stiff and stark sat the child there with her matches, of which one bundle had been burnt. She wanted to warm herself, people said. No one had the slightest suspicion of what beautiful thing she had seen. No one even dreamed of the splendor in which, with her grandmother, she had entered on the joys of the new year.
wow. Wow. Like, we said we were going to do kid stories. This is the one you picked. That's not a good kid story. That's really sad.
It's
Wow.
it's all in the way you look at it, like
I
I
guess.
remember my mother read this to me um when I was a kid, and I remember thinking, well, to all the outsiders it looks sad, but in reality she saw these amazing beautiful visions, and then she went to a happy place. So so it's all in how you interpret it. She saw
I
these wonderful
guess.
visions, and then she reunited with her grandmother, and she was happy. So I think this captures sort of the spirit of Christmas too. Um, for obvious reasons. So it's kind of like a unique Christmas story because it's not directly about Christmas,
Mhm.
but it is capturing the themes of Christmas, right? And I
What,
think
what,
it's
what,
really,
what were the themes of Christmas? What was the theme?
well, the fact that she goes to heaven and she's with God at the end.
I guess. Yeah, she was with her grandmother. Yeah. That when she strikes all the matches together, that reminded me of the to build a fire. He does the same thing. Remember,
Yeah,
he hits all of them, and the sulfur gets in his nose, and he drops them in the snow. I think that's what
yeah.
happened.
I mean,
Oh,
I don't look at the ending as sad. I look at it as kind of bittersweet,
she
where
freezes to death. But, oh,
right, but
I
it's
don't.
she's happy. Like she's not happy in her life, clearly. Her father, it's hinted at that her father doesn't treat her well. Nobody loves her except her grandmother.
He's got
So
her out selling matches in the street, and he's beating her when she doesn't. So,
exactly. So
but
she,
I will say though, I mean, if you're going to send your kid out to sell something, though, matches that's a pretty good commodity in that type of weather.
yeah.
I mean, he's setting her up for success. In other words, so
Yeah.
he didn't
Well,
send
I
her out there
really
with ice cubes or anything.
yeah.
So
I mean, I really like the themes, about poverty, compassion, transcendence. It is a melancholic kind of narrative, but it reflects the harsh realities of societal inequality. And it does have a happy ending, depending on how you look at it. So
it
I
has a
kind
very
of look at
Dickens
it,
feel to it.
what?
Hmm. It has the Dickens feel, like Christmas Carol,
Yeah.
that the Dickens vilif Dickens' Christmases, or Charles Dickens specifically, it vilifies the bourgeois, the rich people, and that the poor people are more moral by stint of their position. Meaning that the fact that she's kicking around in the snow, freezing to death, makes her a better person than the people who are in the house just enjoying their Christmas. That's a
And
very Dickens
I didn't
kind of
really
story.
get that from the story.
I mean, she goes to heaven. She's granted she's granted
Yeah.
a quality afterlife, um,
Yeah, but
because of her
it
choice.
doesn't say that the rich people aren't going to heaven. Like there's nothing in the story that suggests, well, she gets to go to heaven, but the rich people don't.
No, but you see, like that's why I say it's very Dickens, though, because the she's poor and she still finds a joyous exit. Like she still like she doesn't burn and she doesn't go
Yeah.
to hell or Hades.
Yeah.
She goes to heaven. So that would mean in some nature that her suffering was some sort of a virtue, which is that's very Dickens. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
again like I don't interpret it as like just because she's suffering that makes her virtuous. Um I mean I didn't get that from it, but um
I just say it kind of it smells like Dickens. Um, that's why I say that because Dickens that's very common for his stuff.
yeah.
But I don't know.
Yeah, I really like that despite her tragic circumstances, the girl finds solace and like her joy and her visions. And even though the ending can be sad, it gives you a sense of hope and spiritual transcendence, which is sort of like the theme of Christmas in the first
Would
place.
you would you think it was negative if I said that the little match girl is essentially to build a fire meets a little girl?
I mean, so in To Build a Fire, he doesn't really have the same experience that she does.
He has
But
those hallucinations where he
he
thinks
does have,
about
that's
yeah.
true, yeah. I mean, I can definitely see like they're very
But
similar.
those are adult hallucinations.
Yeah,
I'm coming back to see my body, and
yeah,
I'm making it into camp, and they're giving me food, and everything's fine.
yeah.
Whereas her hallucinations are more about her grandmother.
Well, the other thing is like I have more sympathy for a child who doesn't know how
Hmm.
to like she's a child and she's trying to make money by selling these matches. I have more sympathy for her than an adult who's perfectly capable of making money. And there isn't like, and To Build a Fire, the theme of like uh economic inequality, that isn't there in To Build a Fire.
Oh, it
Like
is. It is. I mean, he's there suffering because he wants gold. I mean, so he
Well, but
wants money.
there's nothing about his circumstance like to suggest that he's poor or that he isn't capable of making money, right? Because he's an adult who just doesn't listen to an older adult who warns him not to go in the woods. So I have
You're giving
less
him too much credit.
sympathy. What?
I think you're giving him credit for his years, right?
Well, if you're an adult, you would think you
Yeah.
have a lot more life experience. I mean,
That's fair.
obviously you have more
I
life
mean, I get you. I
experience than
get
a
you. I
child.
get you. Yeah.
So I'm just saying I have more sympathy. I can see how they're somewhat similar, but they're very
Mhm.
different in other ways
I no,
because
I don't mind innocence being innocence can always be an excuse, in that
an
regard. And that
excuse.
children get innocence immediately. They always get that excuse.
An
Children
excuse for
always get it.
what?
Excuse for anything, meaning that if that guy freezes to death like that, he doesn't necessarily get the innocence excuse. You can always come in and ask him questions like he didn't know better, things like that. But with a child, you would never stand over a child. No one would ever stand over a child that's frozen to death and ask those questions. You would, because they're innocent. They're innocent. They don't necessarily know better.
I
Like
mean,
she's striking matches like that. I don't think when the guy's doing it, immediately, I imagine when we were reading the story, both of us were thinking, God, don't do that. Do this, do this, do this. But with a child, she's innocent. She doesn't know 1 minute to the next because she's a
yeah.
child. She has
And
very little experience.
I
Yeah.
also like that I feel like the story invites readers to kind of take responsibility to care for others, and to care for people who might be less fortunate. Um, I think that's what I got from it when I read it when I was a kid, because I grew up, privileged with parents caring for me.
Mhm.
Um, So when I was a kid and I read this book, it was kind of like a wake-up call. Oh, not everyone is privileged like that.
Hmm.
Some people are born into poverty. So I do like that it invites readers to take responsibility and care for others. And I like the whole dreams and escapism theme as well. I don't know. I think it's really well written, and I think Hans Christian Andersen does a great job with like the vivid imagery and the details. So,
Hmm. Yeah, that I definitely it brings a lot of interesting questions. But I guess since we're doing a children's thing, I'll leave a few of those out. Um, but maybe another time we could do those. But yeah, I do like the story. It's a little macabre. It's a little sad. It's it's kind of sad. It's sad. I think that if if you were trying to jazz your kid down before Christmas, like maybe you couldn't get everything on a layaway that you got them for Christmas. You couldn't get everything on their Amazon wish list. So you want to tone them down a little bit. Maybe you read them this story and then you say, "Hey, you be happy you're not out there selling matches. You're not going to get the newest game that's on the market. You're not going to get it, but you're at least you're not out there selling matches." um, Having to burn away your materials for profit, losing your profit margin. Yeah, but oh,
so
anyway,
let us know if you love this one or if you hate it or you're somewhat in the middle. I personally love it, and I don't interpret it as sad. I interpret it as hopeful. But again, that's the beauty of these stories. They can be open to interpretation.
yes, that's fair.
So Mopar, what do you think? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you in the middle?
Mopar is somebody in the chat. Where is he? There he is.
Let us know in the chat. Sean
Oh,
says he loves it. Nice.
really? All right. All right.
Anyone
It's kind of
else?
sad. Does it make you feel Christmassy? That story? Not by nostalgia reasons, but just in general.
Daniel says he loves it.
All
Cool.
right. So what do you
All
think,
right.
Kim?
Shall we move
Does
on
it
to
make
the
you
next?
does
Sorry.
that make you feel does the story make you feel Christmassy? Not for nostalgia reasons, but does it just make you feel Christmassy in general?
Well, I think Christmassy, everyone affiliates or associates a Christmas with different feelings. Like some people have
No,
mixed
no, I'm
feelings
talking about you.
of
Just you in
Christmas.
general. Talking about you in general.
Me?
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't
I'm
know. I
saying
mean,
not for nostalgia's sake,
I
but
don't really know how to answer that question because the way I feel about Christmas isn't the way I felt about it when I was a kid. S-
really? Oh, that's the best part about Christmas is doing the kid stuff. You know what I mean? Like going back to the feeling like a kid when you do Christmas. You know
I
what
mean,
I
I
mean?
definitely like the story, but I just don't know how to answer that question because I don't know Christmas has a different feeling for me as an adult.
Yeah, all right.
So,
I for me it does too, but I that's the thing, that's the revelry that I would live in with Christmas. That's the thing that I enjoy the most is being a kid. And I don't tear open gifts like a child does, but man, I do like watching a kid do it. Because it just makes you feel like a kid again. You know what I mean? Just for a second, you kind of
yeah.
see that just that blitz that the kid has
Yeah.
where there's blinders, nothing else matters in the world. They're just ripping into something. I don't know. Like I say, I'm not going to be able to do that necessarily, probably ever in my life. But maybe when I get old and simple. But right now, I mean, I can't. So it's seeing a kid do that, even if it's on a show. I don't know. That's the thing about Christmas I like the most is you kind of can be a little childish. I don't know.
Yes,
It's
I
one of the only holidays
agree.
you can do it. Yeah. Maybe Valentine's Day you're allowed to do it too, but you're kind of expected to act a certain kind of childish, but lovey-dovey. But anyway. Anyway, there's very few holidays you get to do that.
Yes, I agree.
But
So,
I
do
do
you
love it.
want to read Snow White or do you want to read the Snowman poem?
I was going to do the snowman if you want. Do we? Yeah, let's do the snowman. Then we'll see if we can get to the Snow White. Snow White's kind of long, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a little longer, so we can just do the Snowman poem.
Yeah,
This is a
I'm
different
down
from
for that.
the story we read earlier. It's just a poem. So I'll let
Yeah,
you
I
read.
found it. I found it honestly by accident when I was searching out Christmassy themes, and I thought you might like it. I think it's
Yeah.
kind of deep, and this might be a precursor because we've got a couple months from now. I think a couple months from now, we're supposed to be slated to do a poetry month or something to
Yeah.
that effect. So anyway,
So who
um,
wrote this poem?
this is written by Wallace Stevens.
Okay.
So I'll read it and you tell me what you think.
And
I
you can
thought I had good
find
feel.
this on the Poetry Foundation.
Yes, and they are awesome. That's where we got all our post stuff from, or the majority of it. I'll put
Yeah.
it in the Oh, you found it? Did you find it? Kim?
Yes.
Okay. Don't read it. I just put it in the
Okay.
chat. But yeah, that's where we got a lot of our post stuff from. So I love the poetryfoundation.org. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We love poetry and we're glad
Yes.
that you keep it alive. Poetry is great. A lot of people in literature now, flash fiction is becoming popular. Where you want to do short, very short stories because people
Yeah.
don't have attention spans anymore and they want to look at their phone while they're driving and whatnot. Poetry is that. It's a more sophisticated version of flash fiction. So let's all love poetry for what it is.
Yes.
It's all the music we
Absolutely.
listen to. It's all the things around us. Poetry is everywhere.
Hmm.
So anyway, poetry is great. So you ready?
I'm ready. So The Snowman by Wallace Stevens. Take it away.
One must have a mind of winter to regard the frost in the boughs of the pine trees crusted with snow, and have been cold a long time to behold the junipers shagged with ice, the spruces rough in the distant glitter of the January sun, and not to think of a misery in the sound of the wind, in the sound of a few leaves, which is the sound of the land, full of the same wind that is blowing in the same bare place. For the listener who listens in the snow, and nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is.
Wow.
It's very foreboding, or foreboding, that's not the correct word. Forlorn. It's a little
Hmm.
sad. And would you say that it's if you're standing out in the snow and you're by yourself and you can hear the snow hitting the ground, which it means it's very quiet, that this is a
Yeah.
pretty good version of that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's a nice depiction of the human relationship we have with our surroundings and our environment,
Hmm.
how our environment affects the way we feel inside. Um,
Hmm.
perception, our perception affects our reality.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, I like that. I like the free verse. I like the syntax. The imagery, I can actually really see like a snowy scene here. It's very much, it makes you think about like, what is nothingness? What does
Hmm.
that mean even? Does nothingness even exist? Like it makes you think about like, nihilism. And,
Hmm.
um, nothing that is not there and the nothing that is. Yeah, how do we even define nothing? Because is nothing still something? So it makes you kind of think about all that. But I
So
do like the sort of like unity of the mind and nature, right?
mhm.
Like our internal world is often a reflection of our external world and vice versa. So,
That's okay. So
uh,
there's the first clocks, public clocks, are in 1335 in Milan, and
mhm.
there it is. Keep going, and that's one of your first man-made inventions. That's noise, and it's a noise that's constant and invented to stay constant. You can hear it. It's going to ring the chimes, the bells, whatever. Uh, when it'll snow in Atlanta or anywhere in the South, probably anywhere in the world that will take snow, when it snows heavily and it just shuts everything down and everything gets quiet and there's no cars on the road, there's none of those clocks. I don't have the clocks so much anymore, but you don't have the cars, the
Yeah,
noise of people, and you go out there and it's just quiet. And you
yeah.
can hear that it's so quiet you can hear the snow hitting the ground.
Hmm.
That's what makes me think about. That's what this makes me think about. And that's you know what I'm talking about. You've had that occurrence, right? When you're deep in the woods
Yeah.
and you not the wind even. The wind is too loud. It's just that time when it's I don't know. That's I don't know. I feel very centered at that point. I feel like I'm very much connected to everything around me. It's a beautiful time. I don't know. You're not disturbed by anything. You
Yeah,
know,
I
maybe
feel like
yeah, maybe
there's
meditative. I don't know.
yes, it definitely feels like meditative. Like there's a sense of peace in the nothingness, in the stillness, right?
Mhm.
American society is very programmed to always go and be busy and do things, and also
Constant
a
stimulation.
constant stimulation. We have the radio, we have the TV, we have like social media, which is such a distraction.
Mhm.
And so this kind of reminds me of moments I've experienced during meditation where I'm very, very still and and everything, the external world almost feels like an illusion. Uh,
Mhm.
it's just a feeling that I get
No,
sometimes
I get you.
that the external world almost feels like it doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
But finding peace in that stillness, that place where there's silence and
Mhm.
quiet and calm and no movement, finding peace in that stillness is something that I've found before in moments of meditation. So that's kind of what this poem
Mhm.
reminds me of.
Well, there's the stories of the Buddha, the thin Buddha, not the fat one, the first Buddha, not the Old Testament Buddha, not the New Testament Buddha,
Mm,
where he talks about meditative practices, where he's meditating down to a grain of rice, where he's meditating, he sits in odd positions and in painful positions, and he's doing it to try to so that that thing is the focus, and then he whittles that away, just
hmm
does away with that. So the rice, the grain of rice is the only thing that keeps him of substance, and then he'll just do away with that. And then now it's just him. Or if he's in an awkward position, that would be the focus of it because it's so much of an irritant that it becomes the focus naturally or organically, and then he would do away with it. And for that reason, he would be more centered. It was
hmm
like he was doing away with all obstruction at that point by making one thing a key obstruction. It's a very interesting
Yeah.
idea. But anyway,
I
yeah.
also really, I also had a thought about this whole idea of maybe there is no reality, only perception, or the theory of quantum mechanics, how nothing really happens if there isn't an observer, someone to observe it. Because at the top, it's one must have a mind of winter to
Mm,
regard the frost and the boughs of the pine trees. So it's almost saying, like, regard
mm,
the in order to regard like the winter season and what happens in nature, you almost have to, your mind has to be in that same state. Uh, I don't know. I think it's really
mm.
interesting. Like I could probably read it again on a different day and like get something different out of it.
We could chat about the quantum. I think the quantum physics or the quantum mechanics thing's probably been way overplayed. But yeah, because there's a thing in physics that's not mentioned on the back of that. Quantum means just really, really, really small.
Yeah.
And mechanics is you're making an effect on something, but there's also a rhythm in physics that says that based on the size of something, the amount of affordable energy that can affect something.
hmm
So if when people talk about that, they don't realize that when you whittle it down to that small, it becomes insignificant. It doesn't have an effect. The observer effect, that one's the double slit experiment I think you're talking about. But
Yeah.
that one's
Yeah.
fraught with problems. They're essentially introducing variables that they can't control and then saying the variables don't exist. That study's kind of hokey.
Well,
I like the
there's a
quantum physics
theory.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying. So there, what made me, the poem just reminded me of that particular theory about if a tree falls in the forest, and no
Doesn't
one
make a sound. Yeah.
hears it, does it actually make a sound kind of thing? So,
If you need if no one's there to see it, does it? Or if no one's there, does it make a
to
sound?
observe it. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the theory of well, one theory when you're learning about quantum mechanics is that there has to be an observer in order for something to exist, kind of thing. But
No, but I guess what I'm saying is that's kind of like quantum mechanics in and of itself is a very small study within physics. But the New Age people have kind of grabbed a hold of that term and they throw it around, kind of like energy or prana. For years, the New Age people use the word energy, but the word energy actually has a physics term to it, and it's
mhm.
used and applicable in certain ways. Not any of the ways they used it, but they just
Right.
use that
Well,
word because it makes it sound better. But
right.
quantum mechanics is that's somebody who didn't
Quantum
do
mechanics
physics.
is just the study of subatomic particles and how they
Yes, but
interact.
I'm saying that it's talked about by the majority of people who talk about it don't do quantum mechanics. They don't like people who talk about chaos theory. There's probably I think if I remember correctly, they said there's like 4 or 5 people in the world that are even qualified to talk about it, but everybody talks about it because it's just a nice new age thing to talk about.
Well, it's also
Um,
just kind
yeah,
of an interesting topic. Like, I think some
it's a,
people like to talk about it, even though I think anyone has a right to talk about something. Like, you can talk about science without being a scientist. You
no,
might not be able to articulate it in like the best way. Like, I'm sure scientists could articulate the theory I was talking about better than I could. But
no, I watched just to give an example, like I watched a speech with Deepak Chopra gave a long speech on quantum mechanics alongside an organismal biologist, and everything he said was complete boulder dash. But he just kept using those words because the words sound they can browbeat somebody with them. And even the biologist in the room questioned him on him. He's like, none of that makes any sense. I'm just saying that that's like quantum mechanics has become kind of like a free for all. It's a new age thing. It's become new age and it's not. It probably is new age in that regard, but it's not the stuff that people are doing with quantum mechanics and physics probably has nothing to do with how it's being applied in conversation, like the way we're using it.
yeah,
Does
well,
that make
I
sense?
think like
Yeah.
anyone has a right to talk about it, and
Sure.
but I wouldn't go around, acting like you know all the ins and outs when you're not a
Mhm.
scientist.
No, I got it. I remember there was a movie a long time ago called What the Bleep, and I think they got that ball rolling and they started talking about quantum mechanics, but that movie was fraught with issues. I mean, it was, but anyway, it's fun. It's fun. I get it.
Yeah,
I
I
get it.
was just saying
Yeah.
the opening, the top here sort of reminded me of quotes I've read about
Mhm.
quantum mechanics and that
I got
particular
that.
theory, which I'm sure a scientist could explain better than I could.
Same for me. Yeah, yeah. I get you. I get you. I mean, I like it though. I do like I say, the forlornity of it. It does. It's got kind of a sadness to it. I don't know. There's a phrase in the book by Thomas Mann, Magic Mountain. Um, when this lady's on stage and she's really sad and she's giving a speech, and he says she exhaled forlornity like damp from a cellar. And so whenever I hear the word forlornity, it makes me think about. So this makes me kind of feel like that, like damp from a cellar.
Yeah.
Um, it just has that feel to it, like a little musty, a little cold, not
To me,
forgiving at
it just
all.
makes me feel
Yeah.
kind of like at one with the quietness of nature and because I see like a beautiful like snowy scene and I
Mhm.
actually feel like a feeling of peace when I read it. But
Yeah.
again, that might be me coming from my own subjective view of the world, right? So
Mhm.
that's what I think really good poetry is going to affect everyone very differently. And on a different day, I might read this and feel more melancholy. On a
Mhm.
different day, I might read this and feel more like, what a beautiful, you know what I mean? So,
Mhm. Mhm. Well, they
uh,
said that that's the point of art is that it's successful art if it spirits conversation.
mhm,
Um, when I was at this community college years ago, they had all this weird art all over the place, and everybody asked why I was there, and they said that'll make you guys talk to each other, and they were right. People would
mhm,
catch You'd catch yourself standing there looking at something, and somebody would walk up and talk to you, and you end up having this long conversation that may or may not have anything to do with the art you're looking at, but
mhm.
something about that just spirited something inside of you. It shook something loose. That's
Yeah.
important. So I mean, we're doing that right now, but I don't know. Yeah, so I'm with you. I'm with you. Tomorrow it might be different. Maybe that's
So
what makes it beautiful.
do we love this one? Do we hate this? Or are we in the middle?
I'm gonna give
I
it a go.
love Yeah, I love
Okay.
this one. I think it's great. I actually want to read it again and think about it again at some point. Uh,
Hmm.
but I think that's all the time we have for today.
I think
So
that's fair. Yeah.
let us know if you're watching, listening from home. Let us know what you think about the stories you read and discuss if you love them, hated them, felt somewhere in the middle. If you have any stories you'd like us to read and discuss related to this winter season, drop a comment. And please subscribe to our channel or share it with anyone who you think might enjoy it. Yeah, we hope to motivate people to read more books and to engage in thought-provoking dialogue with this. So thank you
Anything
for
written down, we'll
joining.
pick it up and talk
Yeah,
about
yes.
it. Mhm.
Um, so stay tuned to our community page where we'll be sharing when we're going to do our next little podcast where we'll read and discuss more winter-themed literature.
And the Grinch is coming up. The Grinch
Yes,
is coming up, which is
we're
exciting.
gonna we're gonna go down nostalgic lane and read and discuss The Grinch.
Yes, the Grinch is exciting. I love the
That'll
Grinch.
be a fun one. Well, thanks for joining Mopar and everyone. I hope you stay
Thank
warm
you.
out there. And till next time, take care, okay?